call the meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everybody. I cannot keep myself from making a pun about the day, the 15th of March, and beware the Ide of March is running this meeting. So the first thing is approval of minutes, and I would entertain a motion to approve the February 22nd meeting minutes. Okay, motion made by Ilda. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second by Brendan. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Oh, for people who are watching this, we have two board members joining us on. Oh, Ilda? You have to abstain from the February 2nd, 22nd minutes because you weren't there at that meeting. So is that okay if we change your vote to abstaining?
Yes, I changed my vote to abstain.
Thanks. Thanks. We do have two board members online joining us right now and maybe a third. So Paula and Ilda are online. I would entertain a motion to approve the March 1st, 2023 minutes.
So moved.
Motion made by Brendan, seconded by Katina. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you. So next thing is public comment. Is there anybody in person or online who would like to speak during public comment? Okay, I guess we'll keep moving along. So we're on to board chair's report. Well, there's just one thing I want to report to the board and the public is that the Board of Ed will be presenting its budget to the Board of Finance next Wednesday, March 22nd, at their meeting at Town Hall in the Bellingham Auditorium at 7 p.m. And I encourage fellow board members to join us there to show their support for this budget, and anybody else who would like to show support for the budget. It isn't a public hearing, it's just a presentation to the full Board of Finance, and we will probably be called back for a second session at some point to answer any questions that may come up. And then there will at some point be a public hearing, at which point the public can show up and say anything they'd like to say. But I will just mention that there is public comment period at those meetings, and if anybody wants to go say something positive about our budget, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. And so now I'll hand it over to the superintendent.
Okay, there's a couple of items I want to bring the board up to speed on that are not in the packet. The first is you all have a copy in front of you. It's just a reminder. If you remember a couple months back, we let you know that there was going to be a student expo, art and music expo for K-5 and 6th through 12th grade students, and those are scheduled for March 29th and 30th. They're being held right here in this auditorium. The K-5 students are performing on March 29th, and the 6th through 12th grade students are performing on the 30th, and there will also be a visual art gallery containing the students' artwork on both those nights. So just want to invite the board members to attend, let you know that it's happening. The next thing that's also not in your packet is, if you remember a couple months back, we celebrated Natchog Elementary School for their collaborative work with puppets and Yukon, and they had their work actually published in Edutopia, and we have the video, so we'd like to let the board members watch that video because it's a really well-done piece, and we're very, very proud of Natchog Elementary School students and staff. We are going to see that. Where are we watching it? Up back here. Okay, right behind you. So,
Can you share that with us?
yes, I absolutely can, and it's actually, if you do a search on Utopia, Edutopia, you will actually see that video because it's been officially published, and so proud of Natchog School.
And people may remember it was featured on National Public Radio also a couple months back, so it's gotten some real national attention, which is great.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to the next slide. So, board members have the slide in front of you, and it might not look like a whole lot, but you'll see there's this picture here at the bottom, and has a piece of the new pergola going into central office. It has the central office sign, and then there's a bare piece of earth there between the sidewalks. So in honor of in honor of Board of Education Appreciation Month, Holly came up with this amazing idea that fits right into my whole idea of sustainability, and we are actually going to build a garden in board members' honor. So if you look at the next slide, you will see we already purchased the start of the garden, and we're going to, when it's safe to plant them, we're going to get them out there and build on this Board of Ed Appreciation Garden. Each of you also has a little chocolate treat and a certificate in front of you because we appreciate everything you do for the school system and the community in general. So,
Thank you. Can we donate plants to be added to the garden if we want?
of course, right? The bigger the better. We're also going to get a little plaque that makes sure
Okay.
everyone knows exactly what it is. So it'll be something we can sustain over time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to the items that were included in your packet. I've given you the biweekly summary of attendance and discipline data. I don't know if there's any specific questions. I did let the board members know that we've decreased our chronically absent students by 10%. We're happy about that, but we obviously know we still have a much deeper dig to get back to pre-pandemic totals. So we're working hard at that, but we are happy at the progress we're making. Discipline data shows a year-to-date comparison. With all schools showing a reduction in reported incidents, we're still very much tracking the number of in-school and out-of-school suspensions. We have another meeting of our district discipline committee on Friday, and they're doing some activities that we hope will bring us closer to calibrating our whole response to student discipline. I don't know if there's any specific questions.
Mary?
Yeah, you know, I do think it's great that we have been getting this data at the meetings. And I did want to say I am a little concerned, though, that the most serious out-of-school suspensions and expulsions are up this year. And also just to say that it is useful to look at trends, but it's not as if we're looking at the children last year in the same way. So what happens this year, you know, if it's better, say at Natchog, that is a positive movement, but we don't know, you know, if individual students have improved. So, you know, I know it's not possible to be that kind of focused, but I don't want to sort of assume that it's a win, you know, when we do still have a lot of work to do in this area of climate. And some of the children who may have had, you know, repeat incidents, say at the middle school last year, might be at the high school this year. So, you know, in some ways, we should be aware of that, just in the sense of, you know, having the holistic picture of the whole district. And also really working on out-of-school suspensions and expulsions, which are very troubling and can leave permanent, you know, scars for students.
Do anybody else have any comments they'd like to make or questions? Okay.
Next is the Windham Middle School update. As I've shared in the board packet, I feel like we're in a place where there's definitely evidence of all hands on deck. The leadership team is working hard to help us reach the goals we've established. We are closing in on our state assessment window. And they're currently working to allow the Windham Middle School students to practice grade level reading and to apply some of those close reading strategies that are going to help them do well on those assessments. And not only on the assessments, because I'm never a big cheerleader for state assessments, but close reading strategies apply to all, any piece of text that they actually pick up and read. So it's sort of a life skill. So we're happy to see that's happening across content areas. They have a number of events coming up to engage their parents and sort of motivate and engage their students. There's a list there in the board packet. I don't know if there's any questions or comments.
I don't see any. Thank you for that report. It is encouraging to see that some of these good steps forward are happening.
We're moving forward, yes. I can let you know that the March 24th family movie night is the movie Hidden Figures. We've taken care of the copyright process that has to happen in order to show that movie. And I would like to invite any board members interested in being a part of that family engagement activity to please join us on Friday, March 24th.
I'd just like to mention that movie Hidden Figures, there's a local resident whose sister was one of the women who was in that program at NASA, who was a leader on the mathematical end of things.
That's pretty amazing.
And I've heard her tell her story, and at some point maybe we might want to tap her and see if she would come talk to
Sure, I
students.
feel like the middle school students could do something, some kind of writing activity that could potentially engage her and invite her in. I had no idea about that. I know that they chose the movie because it obviously has natural connections to math and science, and it showcases these incredibly, intelligent and brave women of color. So it has all the academic and social connections we want to make for our kids. So
I don't know, I could ask her if she'd be interested in talking about,
yeah, and
I
I want
mean,
to get the
talking
kids
to
to
you.
write to her, though I feel like we could use it as a
okay, we could
an
work on that.
opportunity. I'll talk to Carlos and the leadership team. I had no idea about that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, moving right along, there's an update for the board related to the Windham High School construction. The food service area, the kitchen area of Windham High School is going to be off. It's going to be offline, closed out, being under construction between June of this year and the date is January 15th of 2024. Eric Vole, the Director of Food Services, has worked hard to come up with a solution. He has secured a kitchen space across the street at Eastern. Thank you to Eastern, and we'll be sending a formal thank you to President Nunez. They're going to be cooking the food across the street and shipping it over to Windham High School. So it's not the best setup, but it's what we have for the time period. And as it mentions, there's a few items food services has to purchase to make this all work. So I just wanted the board to be up to date on that.
Would you please extend to Eric and the whole team over there how much we appreciate their creativity in dealing with things all throughout COVID and providing meals and food to people, as well as now facing another challenge and figuring out creatively how to deal with it. It is very impressive.
It is. They really do roll with the punches, so to speak. So I will share that feedback for certain. Okay, next up is, again, to bring the board up to speed on the Human Rights Close to Home initiative that we are working with in collaboration with the University of Connecticut. This program is a partnership with UConn's Human Rights Institute, and teachers from Windham were invited to apply to the program and are eagerly awaiting acceptance. If teachers are selected, they'll be part of a 3-year cohort, which we're really excited about. It also involves our students, and if there's any specific questions about the program, Dr. Ware is here to answer them because he is the one overseeing the Human Rights Close to Home initiative.
Does anybody have any questions about that? Katina?
I don't have a question. I want to say thank you for doing that initiative and everything you're doing for equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Next up is just an update to remind the board of our Social Emotional Day, the International SEL Day was celebrated on Friday, March 10th. The central office is actually doing their activities this week, and all of our schools have been engaged in more than just a day's worth of SEL celebrations. Many took on a full week's worth, and I think the high school actually put theirs off until after PSATs, but they have a whole series of things that they're working on as well. And the video that we showed at the beginning of the meeting is an example of the kind of the kind of things we're focused on to help our school environments and students to achieve. Any questions about SEL Day? Next up, just an update on the March 3rd Professional Development Day. That update was provided by Mr. Weathers and also by Beth Brunet, because she did the 2-day training March 2nd and 3rd on Beyond Diversity with the Pacific Education Group. I think they're still gathering feedback from the March 3rd professional development. Still in the process? Or is the window closed for gathering feedback? Okay, sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Weathers.
The feedback, we just actually shared it with all the administrators that are part of the district committee. It was overwhelmingly positive. Actually, it was the highest percentage of good and outstandings for PD Day since Dr. Youngberg and I have been running PD Day. So we are very happy and pleased with the feedback. And I shared a little bit in the paragraph, and then I know that Ms. Pranay went into the details of the Beyond Diversity, which was a very, very successful 2 days. And we had people that didn't formally submit feedback necessarily on the PD form were overwhelmingly positive in the session, including some of the people in this room.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions or feedback or
I think,
comments?
Katina, were you participating in that?
Yes, both Ilda and I participated on the 2 days of the Beyond Diversity, as well as a neighborhood friend. I'm sorry. Yes, both Ilda and I participated on Beyond Diversity and NAACP, neighbor of Ilda and ours, that is part of the association or organization, which I am part of too. It was brilliantly done. I have been using the skills I learned that day. It was the right combination of information, thought process, and emotion. A good balance of all that. People exposed their feelings and talked about them, as well as acknowledge their own biases. So it was very successful in my humble opinion. Ilda, do you have anything to add?
Diversity goes more than those
Mhm.
with the members of our table. And I think a lot of the Caucasian people that were there were kind of embarrassed about the numbers and the experiences that we do have and that our kids have. And these are important conversations for us to keep having. And so I'm very for that. You know, let's keep talking about these things and making some changes for the better for our kids.
Yeah. We did.
And talk to the kids and find out what's going on. 'Cause you never know. 'Cause a lot of kids. I know I took another diversity seminar a while back, and we find out that a lot of black and brown kids don't even get breakfast anymore. They go to school hungry, they're tired,
Mm.
and then it's expect them to pay attention, and it's hard. So we need to ask questions and keep talking to each other.
To me, it was fascinating, and well, we have both intra-racial and interracial conversations. And regardless of education levels, many of us had very low scores by the way that society perceives us, right? And questioning that. So it was fascinating, regardless of age or socioeconomic status or educational status, how people were rating themselves based on our own experiences of being discriminated against or oppressed. It was very tough to go through the process, and it was a outstanding learning. And we use a compass in all our thoughts and processes, which are the thoughts and the feelings, the knowledge and the action. And then I really have been using, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What do I actually know? What am I gonna do in multiple interactions all the time? Thank you.
Thanks, Katina.
Thanks for helping to bring that session to life for the rest of us who couldn't be there. And I really appreciate both of you sharing and going to the session. Thanks.
Last but certainly not least on my list is the summer school update. Just to let you know that summer school 2023, summer fun 2023, the registration and details are now available on our district's website for all incoming kindergarten through grade 8 students. Registration will be open through April 6th. There's obviously been a whole lot of planning going on behind the scenes. I have to thank Liz Baumgardner and Albie Harris, as well as Mr. Weathers, for all the work that they're doing to bring summer school to light, and that also includes pupil services for the ESY programs. As I've let the board know, our summer school initiative is being showcased at the CAPS conference on March 28th. We have been using ESSER funds to increase our summer school attendance and to engage our students throughout the summertime. So that's being showcased at CAPS, as well as the visiting teachers from Spain is an innovation that the district put in place to reduce the number of teachers during the teacher shortage. So both of those topics are being showcased by CAPS. Any questions on summer school?
You might want to explain what CAPS is, because if you talk in acronyms, not everybody knows what you mean.
So CAPS is the superintendent's organization. It's the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents.
Thank
CAPS.
you.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. And that's all I have.
I don't see any questions. Thank you for all that, and we're going to go on to committee reports. And the first committee up is curriculum. You're on, Mary.
Yes. Much of what we talked about at the curriculum committee was covered in the update about the March 3rd Professional Development Day. So thank you for that. And but the one part that was not covered here was the assessment calendar that we went through, discussing the sort of assessments that are throughout the year, then the state ones, Smarter Balance, Next Generation, Connecticut alternative assessment, I believe, school assessments. I did feel that it was a bewildering number, and I kind of wonder if the students are not overassessed, but maybe that's something to discuss in a future meeting. So that's the report.
Does anybody, you want to
I
add
just
to
want
that?
to comment, so I don't disagree. I think the students are overly assessed. However, we're mandated to assess the students by the state, and we're also mandated to have an internal assessment before they have the state assessments. So I agree with you, but there really is nothing we can do about it. It's just the way it is.
Unless we change things higher up than at the school district level, yeah. Any other comments about the curriculum committee? Or questions? Okay, thanks. Now we're on to policy committee. I'm going to hand it over to you, Katina.
So we met, Brendan, thank you for being there, and please jump in, Brendan. And we discussed which policies need to be repealed because they are no longer applicable in terms of state statutes. Also, our Holly, thank you for the name. Holly, I wanted to call her Mrs. Holly discovered that there are policies that are mentioned that are in the table of contents but never existed in writing. So, okay, so there's the list of them. There are multiple of them, so we're just going to, hopefully, the board will agree to remove them. There are a couple of policies that we need to repeal and replace for the model policies of Shipman Goodwin to comply with present state statutes, and two policies for adoption that we had tabled at our previous meeting in the policy committee to get our legal opinion on them, and it is recommended by our lawyers to include, and you all receive the legal recommendation on your packets, so in your email. So that's that. Anything else, Brendan?
No, you covered it pretty well. Those last two that are just for adoption, not only was it legally recommended, I do believe you said it was to meet statutory requirements.
Right. Yes. Anything else you would like to add, or anybody else? Holly? Okay, so that's our report. Thank you.
Mary, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just curious about what prompted the legal opinion that we were sent.
Actually, if I recall correctly, you were in our previous meeting, and we all discussed and decided to table them for discussion for the next meeting, which happened last week, and ask for a legal opinion. Do you remember? You were in our previous meeting, and so that was the discussion. Just to make sure that it was statutory mandated or necessary.
For the evaluations? I mean, I think, I didn't have any question about that.
No, for the last two.
Reference 8.
No, I'm talking about we received a legal opinion with our announcement about this meeting specifically for 2140.1 and 2400. It was emailed with the notice of this meeting. I just wondered what prompted that, and, you know.
You were
It
at
came-
the meeting, and if Dr. Youngberg or anybody else can help me, but we were making sure that those could be, in this case, those are the ones that are going to be repealed, right? Yes. So
Well, it
was
just said-
a decision-making process of the entire group on the prior policy committee that we should make sure to know that it was appropriate to repeal those two, correct? But it was a group decision of the policy committee.
Did you want to say something?
I don't know the exact dates, but I know there was a question about, was it, I had said that I spoke to the attorney about it, and the attorney gave that recommendation, And there was the feeling that they wanted to see the recommendation in writing and not just through the verbal conversation I had with
Hey,
Attorney Ritter.
Actually, wasn't it prompted by,
I think it
you or
was,
Mary?
I think you actually asked the questions, Mary. I mean, we can go back and look at minutes,
yes,
but
at the minutes, you were there. Yeah, we will, all three of us, board members. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank the policy committee for continuing to wade through all the updating that needs to be done to the policies. It will be a great day. I think we'll need to have a party when we finally get through it all.
Holly should be the one who is like celebrated that day.
she's definitely
Thank
doing a
you,
lot of work
Molly.
behind the scenes, that's
You're
for sure.
doing a lot of work. Thank you. Anything else on that report? Okay, so now we're going to move on to discussion, and we actually start this agenda item with a presentation from Tanya Fleeting regarding the DESA updates, and then we can open it up to questions and comments. Do you want to say anything, Tracy? You look like you're poised to say
I'm
something.
ready to say something. So everyone knows, I believe everyone's met Tanya Fleeting, our Project Aware Coordinator. That's not actually the title, but it is the title, Coordinator or Manager? Okay, it's Coordinator. Started off as Manager. Okay, so if you remember, I don't know the exact dates, but a few board meetings back, there were some questions about the DESA data, and we went and got the information on the Devereaux Student Strength Assessment, which is DESA, broken out. So Tanya's going to present all the information. She's also given all the board members a little yellow folder with some information in it, and then we can get to questions. Thanks, Tanya.
Okay, sorry. The DESA, the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, which is the DESA, and this is our third year of doing DESA. Next slide, please. So we're going to do an overview of the following. We're going to find out what DESA is. Some of the information you'll be familiar with because you've heard it in previous presentations, but just so that we're all on the same page, I kind of went back a little bit. You're going to learn the social and emotional domains that DESA is linked to, the data that we receive from DESA, which is on the school level, the student level, and also the district level. We're going to look at DESA lesson plans. You also have sample lesson plans in your folder. And we're going to look at how the district utilizes the DESA data. So DESA is a 1-minute assessment, and it observes positive behaviors, not maladaptive behaviors. So when teachers are given this assessment, they'll have a series of questions that you'll see later that ask positive things about their students. It's intended the same way we would use academic assessments. We'll use the DESA information to inform cell instruction, to inform the delivery of that instruction, to look at how we're doing, to look at our goals, like our Tier 1 goals, which is whole school. We would look at the DESA to see that information. It provides information for the key social emotional competencies. There are 5 with KSEL, or the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, which are self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, self-management, and responsible decision making. So this is what the KSEL wheel looks like. You should be familiar with it. Most often it's represented by that circle, and you have a copy in your folders. And when we talk about these 5 competencies, when we talk about self-awareness, we're thinking about the ability to self-identify, to identify our emotions. We're talking about self-efficacy. We talk about social awareness. We're having empathy. We're having respect for others. And we have respect for diversity and inclusion. Responsible decision-making. We're able to problem solve. We're able to analyze our situations and make positive decisions based on that. When we talk about self-management, we're having impulse control, self-discipline, and self-management. And when we talk about relationship skills, we're talking about teamwork, relationship building, and communication. So this is a sample of some of the questions that teachers might see when they're doing the DESA assessment. How often do students accept responsibility for what he or she does? How often do you see them doing something nice? How often do they speak about positive things? How often are they paying attention? How often are they contributing to group efforts? How often are they performing the steps in task or in order?
how often do they show care when doing a project or school work? And how often they follow the advice of a trusted adult? So obviously, some of these questions could be subjective. It's going to be up to the person that's administering to say what's nice or what's not nice. So, you know, there's always kind of some deviation in the answers because those questions could be subjective. So the data that we receive from the DESA, we're going to get your individual student ratings. You can get ratings by grade, by ethnicity and subgroup. You can get whole district ratings by grade, ethnicity, and subgroup, and you'll see some of these ratings. Also by domain, your overall composite scores, all those domains together, but you'll see those 5 competencies again: social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, personal responsibility, and decision making. Those are the K-cell ones, but then DESA adds 2 of their own, which is optimistic thinking and goal-directed behavior. So if you're looking at the scores, you're going to see a T-score of 60 or above are students that are showing emotional strengths. If you see a T-score of 41 to 49, those are your typical students. That's where the largest amount of your student population will probably lie. If you're looking at a T-score of 40 or less, its student is showing they need social emotional supports, and that should be the smallest portion of your population. And if a student scores in the needs area, the teacher will be directly directed to do the full DESA, which is an 8-minute assessment per student. So this is a sample of student A, and if you're in the DESA, even if you change districts, but the other district has done DESA, you can go back and see how the student has scored. So you can see the student started out in a typical area, then they went very close to being in the need. They're right on the line, and then the next assessment still slightly over the line. So they've had some kind of, you know, different movements. I don't know why those movements are there. It could be something personal. It could be the relationship they had in their classroom. But we do see that they had some lows, and now they're peaking back up. And if I were in the system and I clicked on those plots, it would tell me the student's grade and who administered the DESA. And you also would get what you see on the other side, which I just pulled from their assessment a year ago. And I'm sorry, not a year ago. Yeah, a year ago, sorry. And I just put them out of order. A year ago, and then the one that was most recent. So this is another student, and you see this student was struggling. I think this is an 8th grader. Having some struggles, and what you see is they started out typical, and then for a few assessments, they were below typical in the needs area, but they ultimately made some gains. And what you'll find when you do the full DESA, it'll also give you like a results from each domain. So you see where the student really had some problem-solving skills and social emotional comprehension, self-awareness. There's some things that were really low for this student. So this would be, if the teacher was looking at this, a great way for them to kind of build skill set around what they're seeing that the student is lacking. So this is from one of our schools, and this is their overall social and emotional competency score. So you see 7% of their students are in the need for instruction, which is about normal. I think what they say is 5% is normal for your students to be in the need. And the majority of their population is in typical, which is what we would expect. And then obviously you have your students that are in the strengths area, the same way we would if we were looking at academic data. So this is the same data, but now you're seeing it by domain. So it really gives you a glimpse into where our students at this particular school are lying. So on a whole, some of the areas that they may struggle with are social awareness and goal-directed behavior. So if I were looking at this data as a principal, as a teacher, or a social worker, it would help me build some curriculum, some tier 1 curriculum that I need to work at with my entire school. So this is by grade, and again, you could do the same thing by grade. You can look at trends in certain grades. From just my personal interpretation, if you're looking at kindergarten and then again at 5th, you may be looking at some transition years, like a student first coming into school for their first time, a student getting ready to transfer out, transition out. So there are many reasons why we may see those. We see our 3rd grade in this school is like doing awesome, but the majority of our students are still in the typical area, which is what we would expect. So this is our breakdown by race and ethnicity. So this is important because we would want to see if we have any inequities, if we have any disparities in those groups. If we saw one particular group scoring in one particular domain, that would be an area of concern that we would want to look at. So it's a great way to make sure that we're doing things with equity. So this is the whole district by grade. You're looking at all of our schools, and you're looking at our students, again, in kindergarten, rather, having some struggles a little bit over what we would expect in the typical area. And then kind of revving up again in more transition areas, your fifth grade, your sixth graders, your seventh graders, all those areas that, you know, we normally expect because there's some developmental changes in those areas. So, and as on a whole, the district, what our areas of growth are social awareness and goal-directed behavior and personal responsibility. So if we were looking at building district-wide goals, we would look at the data of how to support in those areas, because we can see from the data that those are areas that our students are struggling with. So if you were in the DESA system, they have, each domain has about 30 to 55 resources. The lesson plans and strategies are taken from our leading K-cell select research-based curriculums, such as Second Step, Caring Communities, and the 4 Rs. So if you clicked on one of those, and you have some samples in your folder, if you clicked on any of those, it would give you resources that students could do individually, that you could do as a teacher, or that they can do as whole class together with their peers. So these are some of the questions that were asked of each of our schools of how they're utilizing DESA. So the question is, how is DESA data utilized to inform Tier 1 instruction? And one of our responses is DESA data is utilized to determine Tier 1 outliers. So you're looking at those students who are falling in the needs section and looking at what can I do to help those students holistically. You make cell goals directly correlated to data. So again, if we looked at the areas that your school or the district was struggling in by domain, we could build strategies based on those domains. Use specific domain data to make changes to Tier 1 practices. So if we're looking at our students struggling with self-awareness, on a whole, for Tier 1, we could build strategies for our whole school to increase our Tier 1 practices, because Tier 1 is for everyone. Staff also reported they weren't comfortable enough with using DESA data, so you know that's a growth point where we can do more training, because we have had turnaround since we did some of the original training. So we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable using it and knows how useful it is. Is DESA data utilized to move students between tiers? So it wouldn't be the only thing that is used to move a student between Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. We could use DESA data, the behavior curriculum, and MTSS, the MTSS process to move students. So it would be in combination with other things. We would review past and current DESA scores. As I mentioned, your DESA score follows you no matter what district you're in. So if the other district was doing DESA and we had students that moved into this district, we could still see how they scored. We have limited knowledge of how DESA data is utilized after the assessment was given. So again, a growth area, if even one person is saying they don't know how it's used, then we need to make sure that they know how it's used and why we're doing it. And we're not just doing it to do it, we're doing it for a reason, to use that data to move our students social emotionally.
Tanya, I don't mean to interrupt, but Lynn asked me the question, what MTSS stands for, and it stands for multi-tiered systems of support. It's essentially the acronym used to describe our intervention process. I just want the board to know that. Right.
Thank you. So is DESA data utilized?
You're going to need to explain the CBITS and BB. Yeah.
Is DESA data utilized to place students in character education, or CBITS and bounce back? And those are our trauma-informed groups, and please don't ask me what they stand for. Cognitive behavior interventions, and I'm sorry. Yes, BB is bounce back. I do know that one. So, but they're trauma-informed groups that our social workers run. Also, is it utilized to assist in creating 504s, IEPs, or BIPs? So, DESA data, along with other assessments and observation, is used to create the CBITs and bounce back groups. It wouldn't be used solely. Those groups, the CBITs, which is for older children, also comes with an assessment called the Ohio. So, really, that is what is used to kind of figure out if students belong in those groups. What you would use the DESA data for is to get a pool. So you get a pool of students that seem to be struggling, and you may do an assessment on them to find out then if they belong in the group. But it wouldn't be the singular thing that, you know, identifies them for the group. DESA data is utilized to form social work groups, yes, to do character eds and character education classes, and also their caseloads. And I wanted to mention that DESA would not be the most appropriate indicator for students who internalize their problems, as their underlying struggles would not be identified by this particular assessment, meaning those students who appear neurotypical, they're not going to show because they're showing all the things that we want to see. They're showing all the right behaviors. So you're going to get your neurodiverse students in the DESA, but you're probably not going to get your neurotypical because they probably are doing all those things that we expect a student to do. So it wouldn't be a good indicator for those who are internalizing. How does DESA data inform the likelihood that school-based service providers seek to connect students with outside supports? Again, it would be a piece of the puzzle, but it wouldn't be a singular determining factor in seeking outside supports. It would be inclusive of other assessments, observations, the MTSS process, along with using behavior curriculum data. So it can be a piece of the puzzle. Should classroom teachers or social workers use DESA data? My opinion is that both could and do use it. DESA data is appropriate for both of them. Teachers would utilize the data of their students to view social emotional strengths and weaknesses, to assist in relationship building and classroom management, the same way they would use academic assessment. The data from DESA would be utilized in that way to inform cell instruction. Social workers would utilize that data to create a whole group or tier 1 whole school cell goals. It could be an indicator of eligibility for character education groups like CBITS and Bounce Back, and to set student cell goals and track growth. So I could track growth. We do this 3 times a year. So if I were tracking growth, I could look at the pre, which is done in early October, the mid, which is in February, and then the final one will be like the last week in May. So now I'm tracking growth, and if I move on to those students, as those students move on, then that information is still there for the next teacher to see where that student is, or the social worker to use when working with that student. So it is a great way to track social emotional growth. So I think our next steps for DESA data is schedule time on a school level for sharing and understanding DESA data, because we do it 3 times yearly. We should be discussing it at least 3 times yearly. Schedule times in our district data team meetings to share and discuss data. We can set school-wide tier 1 cell goals based on DESA data. And we consider using students whose strengths are assessed in the strengths area as peer monitors. And I think some additional training is needed on the DESA platform, because we did have teachers saying that they weren't sure how to get at all the data that, I shared tonight. So we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable utilizing the data. Now, any questions?
Go ahead, Katina.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all those questions that we have.
Katina, you need to hold the microphone in front of your mouth if you're going to turn around.
Sorry. Yes, thank you again for doing all that and answering all those questions. So I'm glad that you said that one area of improvement is to focus on school level basis, and also inform people in a school level what the DESA results are, and utilize them for interventions at a school school-wide. I'm going to hopefully suggest to Dr. Youngberg that DESA is also shared and discussed with all the principals, and that it becomes an important part of the process in prevention, because this is all about prevention. I have a question regarding discipline incidents that we have in your report, Dr. Youngberg, and DESA data. I wonder if some of those students who are in the trouble area are the ones who are also acting up in the schools, and if there are any correlation on that, so because then we can use the data to do some prevention at the tier 3 level also.
I don't know the answer to the question. I would suspect it to be true, but I would want to cross-reference the data before I could say, but it's definitely something that we can figure out.
Thank you. You said some teachers are not feeling comfortable using the data, so I imagine that teachers might not be teaching the domains if they are not able, or it's not easy for them to access the data or the program. So would be great to, if the resources are right there, if the curriculum is right there, to be using it. So I hope we emphasize that too for the teachers. Do parents know what the results of the DESA are for each, for their son or daughter?
I mean, the
or
results,
them?
they could, the results can be shared with parents, but normally just because it's a positive, non-male adaptive assessment, like we don't just share it the way we would other, standardized testing.
Well, that I perceive that as a problem, because our parents then say, "Oh, I'm only called when my student is in trouble," right? And it would be great for parents to know these are the areas that your child is struggling with, and the areas that they are doing really good. And it's an assessment. Parents should know what the results of the DESA are. I don't know how other board members feel, but I strongly feel if I was presently a parent, I would like to know. Okay, sorry, I'm monopolizing. I wrote all my questions. Who does the cognitive behavioral intervention teacher strategies and the bounce back? Who does do those groups in the schools and utilize the models?
So currently we have 12 social workers that are trained in that model.
So they are using it presently, is that what you're saying?
Correct. So we just finished a group. Every school had a group that finished in early January, and then they're doing a second group. So those groups have probably just started. And they've been doing groups on and off. We were stopped by COVID, so we did them last year once, and this is our first year that we're offering those groups twice.
Great, thank you. And definitely the data could be used as one point, like you both said, in conjunction with the parents to get outside supports, and maybe our discipline data would go down. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Katina. If people can't tell, Katina is a social worker. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? I do. So I'm not an educator by trade, but I deal with people in my world all the time, and how well they navigate and figure out how to deal with the rest of the world. So it seems to me that this assessment is a really important factor in how a child may eventually be able to navigate the world and do well. So I do find it interesting that we're not letting parents know how their children are scoring on this. And I was very interested to see, I think it was like one of the next to last points you made in your presentation about how students who are exceptionally good at some of these things might be utilized in a setting as a mentor or a model. And I'd like to know how that could be done without making the other students feel like they're inadequate and not as special as that student that's being held up. I'm curious about that.
So one model we could use and has been utilized is like peer mentors. So I don't think it would be a situation where the student is like pointed out like this student is better than you and they're here to help you. So just in those things like peer modeling, or maybe helping to run some social skills groups, or assist, not run, but helping in those areas, so that the students who are also in that strengths area are also needing other things. So they're beyond just like in academics. If you're in the strengths area, you need some other things. So they need other things too to be utilized, to be motivated. So I think the only example that's coming to my mind is like peer mentoring.
Thank you. And I also want to point out for the board members who aren't here in person, you should get this packet because it's very beautiful and has lots of good information in it. So make sure that you get the packet from Holly. Did you want to say something, Tracy? You look like you were going to.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else?
So part of the struggle is, and it was sort of mentioned earlier when we were talking about the curriculum committee, the district has a series of mandates that we are required to meet, and we're being measured on those mandates. I happen to believe in social emotional learning. I actually know what the research says. If you focus on SEL, you're bound to see increases in your academic achievement. It's been proven. The problem is that there's so many hurdles and hoops to jump over that some of this stuff does fall lower in our priorities. Obviously, improving our school climates, supporting our students in their social emotional development, helping them to see themselves as productive learners in their learning communities is extremely important. And we are doing better than we were before, but there's definitely room for growth, and we have to figure out how to fit it into the priorities because the district has a lot of things it has to work on. So, but I have written down all the feedback, and we will address it.
May I make a final comment, please?
Yes, Katina?
So we feed the kids, we actually give them actual food so that they can learn, because some of them come depleted and hungry, and I don't want to cry. So let's think of socio-emotional learning as the food for the soul and the food for interaction and growing and citizenship and, and community building. And if we don't have either of those, we cannot learn. We cannot learn. And in terms of peer mentors, I will say that at North Windham, once upon a time, we had peer mediators. And so, it would rotate per class and level, and they were just helpers. And so some creative programs could be done, but that's not what I wanted to really talk about. It's like, this is the food for functioning as kind human beings.
Couldn't agree more, actually. And Friday's meeting with the district's leadership committee that's focused on discipline is actually very much connected to this work. And we're sort of on the cusp of naming potentially a tier 1 focus to support social emotional learning, K-8, responsive classroom. It's one of the programs that we've trained our teachers in. Tanya's actually in the process of gathering data for me exactly how many of our current teachers have been trained in responsive classroom, so I can determine what we would need to bring everybody up to speed K-8 if we go that route. I want the committee to have some say in it. It is definitely something that's on our radar. But again, I want to mention that a focus on this and time spent on this, while I believe it to be incredibly important, it may not show the data on the student achievement side. So we have to figure out how we're going to align our priorities. So when we're sitting here having this conversation, when our state assessments are in, and we're not where we need to be, people just need to realize that there's many things that need to be improved at the same time, so we have to sort of go through this very carefully. I agree with you. We just have to figure out how to get there.
thank you for presenting to us tonight, Tanya Fleeting. Want to acknowledge that, too. Thank you. The next, and I want to also mention that during the meeting, Mark Doyle also joined us. So we do have 3 board members with us this evening online. So the next thing is the capital improvement plan. We need to, under action items tonight, take action to approve this plan. As you all know, we sent the budget off to the Board of Finance, which was due today. This is part of the budgeting and financial planning, and so this is sort of another piece of the puzzle that we need to take action on tonight. And the preliminary numbers were presented to us earlier, but I don't know who I'm turning it over to now. You, Tracy, or? And
I could do it.
right,
Sure.
and school planning and design, or Brendan, school planning and design went through this, and we talked about it briefly, but it's in our packet, the latest numbers. It's page reference 5 in our packet.
Yeah, and I don't think anything's changed since we discussed it last time. I think
Right.
there's-
It's still $2.633 million. Do you want to bring the board up to speed on the discussion about the Sweeney heating upgrade, or do you want me to do that? Either way. Okay. So one of the things that came up was the fact, and Dawn brought it to our attention, Dawn Tamakis, our Director of Facilities, brought it to our attention that we had a $925,000 capital improvement item that was approved last year, and it was the second phase of the Sweeney heating upgrade. So verified with Dawn that if we don't move ahead with that heating upgrade, nothing will happen. The heating system at Sweeney will still work. It's a far less efficient system if we were to do the upgrade, but we still will have heat. There won't be any issues. So we had a discussion about whether it makes sense to go ahead with that improvement, given that we have the potential for the elementary consolidation construction project moving forward. And it seems like it might be prudent not to spend nearly $1 million on a building that we potentially might not be using in a couple years. So we had that discussion with school planning design. I reached out to the town, and essentially we have the ability, if the board is in agreement, to not do that work. So I don't know if it actually requires a vote, but I wanted the board to be updated.
Right, can I just jump in? So, you know, we were going back and forth about whether or not we could, that should be deauthorized or taken off the books, and we were told by the town that it's already been approved and authorized, so we can't sort of go back and deauthorize it, but we could just decide not to do it. But it's not going to be, quote unquote, taken off the books by the town, because it was approved already, voted on and approved. Katina.
Since we cannot deauthorize it, will the money then remain there and will we be able to use it in other capital projects?
So the answer from the town was that we can't deauthorize, but we cannot spend that amount, and it cannot be reallocated to a new project because the town meeting already approved it for that specific project. So the answer is no, we can't use it for something different, but we can just not use it.
Or, I mean, I would like to explore with the town whether we could go back and have it recategorized for some, you know, a vote be taken to use it for another use. But I don't think we can do that without the town. We can't do anything without the town. It's not up to the board. Come on up to the mic.
In a situation like that, I was talking with Chris Johnson, and if there was a capital improvement project that runs more than what we allocated, it could go to the Board of Finance. They could vote on it to add that extra money into another project.
So it could be approved for transferred into another project.
Correct. Just
Okay.
the town Board of Finance has to approve on that.
Okay.
Can we have that on writing?
We
We actually do.
I have
We
that.
actually
I
do-
have an email about that.
We actually have a lot in writing, Katina. Yes, already. Yes, and so this is just a matter, I mean, this isn't the town being difficult. This is the way that these matters work. And if they were voted on to be used for one thing, you can't just go change that. But we did try to push the envelope to see how much we could change things. And, I suppose there are worse problems to have, right? That there's money that might be able to be voted on and reallocated for another use. And we know, post-COVID, that projects come in over what we had originally thought they might cost all the time because of cost of labor, cost of materials, cost of energy, whatever it is, it's coming in over budget. So it's a good thing that we have this option. But we didn't want to be mysterious about that because some people may ask, well, why aren't you using that $995,000 that's already been approved for the Sweeney School? And the answer is the School Planning and Design Committee had a deep discussion about what kinds of things we were going to be moving forward on, given the fact that until we have a elementary school consolidation plan in place and approved, it might be prudent to avoid investing money in buildings that may not be utilized, unless it's a health and safety or immediate code matter that can't be skirted in any way safely. Is there any other questions about this capital improvement budget that has been put before us? This is, I think, our second time looking at it. Okay, I don't see or hear anything, so I guess we can move on to action items then.
Lynn?
Yes,
Sorry.
Mark, go ahead.
One quick question. Part of what seems to be happening is we make the capital improvement plan, we vote on them, we forget about them, and 6 months later we realize we have them. Is there a timeline associated with these projects? We didn't do that project because and now we find out we don't need it, but I'm wondering if we have a timeline in terms of this project will start in March, this project will start in June, so that we're a little more purposeful in how we do these things.
Do you want to respond to
Well, I feel like we've had these discussions informally, so I don't know if I have one to provide for you tonight, but I think we can work on trying to lay out how those should be happening. I know some of the things aren't always within our control. We're not always able to get the people at the right time to complete the tasks, but I agree that we shouldn't be forgetting about things that have been voted on. I agree with Mark there.
that? And the School Planning and Design Committee has had conversations about mapping things out over time. And so I think that's probably the next phase of what we need to do after this gets, if this gets approved, then we probably should figure out how we sequence these projects. There may be a number of things that need to be done at the same time, too. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that help, Mark?
Yeah, thank you. It's a matter of putting an action plan together. Now that we have what we want to do, now we have to figure out when we can do it. So we have this plan somewhere. Someone has a
Right.
Gantt chart or whatever.
Right. Right. Okay, I guess School Planning and Design has a little assignment here to work on with the staff. And so now we're on to action items. And the first action item is possible adoption of a resolution regarding the healthy food certification for 2023-24. And there was a fair amount of information about this in our packets. I would entertain a motion to take action on this.
So moved.
Yes. So the move was made by Mark and seconded by, I think, Brendan. And now we're up for discussion. Mary?
Did we need to read this language? I wasn't sure. That's in the packet.
The actual resolution language, you're saying? I mean, the motion language? Yes. So Mary's pointing out that there's actually language in our packet, so should we use that exact motion language?
I don't think we've done that in the past, but did you get a specific directive from Eric? Okay.
Okay. So, does somebody want to read that motion language out loud so then Mark and Brendan can say they're fine with that? Mary, you have it open right in front of you. You want to read it, please?
Okay. Pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 10-215F, the Board of Education or governing authority certifies that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under its jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or by non-school organizations and groups.
Good job, Mary. Thank you. Thank you for reading that. You know, when you're running a meeting, you get tunnel vision and you don't always look at all those details. So I'm glad you caught that. So is that okay with Mark and Brendan, that that's the motion?
My only question is, are those dates correct?
Brendan?
My only question is, are those dates correct? Because at the top it says school year 23-24, and then it has dates for 22-23 in the text.
I think we should probably have those dates reflect the year for which we're approving it.
I didn't speak to Eric, so I don't know if someone else in the room did. The way it is.
Okay, so forget that last motion that was just read, and now we're going to read the combined year one, I guess. Is that what that is?
I don't know. So I'm reading the second one? Okay. The Board of Education or the governing authority will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event, quote, is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The, quote, regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location, quote, means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food and beverage sales.
Okay, so upon reading of both of those motions, they're different motions for different things. So my question is, based on what's on our agenda, we're adopting the resolution regarding the healthy food certification, which is the first motion that we read. The other one is for combined sale of food and beverages. Right?
They seem to go together. So one is for what schools.
During the
So
school
do
day,
we,
and one is-
so do we vote on both of them? Because in our packet, there's one motion and then it says
Board of Ed
BOE
vote.
vote. And then on the other one, it says there's another motion. Okay,
and then that.
So you need both of them then.
So if you approve, just approve both.
okay, so,
Approves both, then we can cover that.
okay. So the motion that's on Mark and Brendan, would you agree to amending the motion to accept both of those motions as read by Mary? To include both of those motions as read by Mary?
Yes, I would agree, because I read it as both of those are, the items of the same policy, so yes, I have no problem.
Okay. How about you, Brendan?
Yes.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Sorry for the confusion. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we have a whole bunch of policies for repeal and policies for repeal/removal and policies for repeal/replacement and policies for adoption.
I highly suggest that we do one at a time because of the complexities. Once is like they didn't exist, so we have to remove it from the table of contents.
So what you're suggesting is there are 4 different kinds of motions.
Correct.
So we have 4 different motions
Thank
that
you.
we, 4
Yes.
different actions that we take.
Each one.
So I would entertain a motion to adopt the policies for repeal,
Mhm.
which are listed under
C.
item 9C.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Please raise your hand. Okay, unanimous. Now I will entertain a motion to take action on the policies for repeal/removal, which are listed under item 9D.
So
And
moved.
there are a lot of them.
So moved.
So motion made by Brendan, seconded
Second.
by Katina. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you. And now I will entertain a motion to adopt policies for repeal/replacement, which are listed under 9 item E.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Katina, seconded by Alicia. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, have unanimous. And then finally, under the policies, I'll entertain a motion on the policies for adoption, which are item 9F. There are 2. So,
Second.
motion made by Alicia, seconded by Katina. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Is there any public comment at this point?
Lynn, I have a question.
Yes.
Did I miss action item B, voting on the capital improvement plan?
Oh, yeah, we rushed right into policy. Thank you. So that would be bad, since we just talked about how important that we do this. Thank you. So I would entertain a motion to accept the capital improvement plan for 2023-24 for $2,633,000. Motion made by Mark,
Second.
seconded by Brendan. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Great, so that we can present this to the Board of Finance. And again, I want to remind folks that we will be presenting our budget to the Board of Finance next week, the 22nd of March at 7 p.m. at Town Hall in the Bellingham Auditorium, if anybody can join us there. And I want to thank the Board of Ed staff for the budget book. Yay!
Yes, and we delivered the Board of Finance copies this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:27.
I move, we move.
Thank you, Brendan. Meeting adjourned.